What was childhood like?
It was interesting, so I was the youngest of 3 kids. I grew up in St. Augustine, Florida, middle-class family. Just for some insight, I'm the only person in my immediate family to graduate from high school, never mind to go off to get like a college scholarship. It's not for lack of intelligence. It was more just like circumstantial, situational stuff. How much do you want to know?
Well, let me ask you, was it lack of just what the generation before, let's say your parents did, them just not knowing that you should finish high school?
No. So my mom had a horrible childhood. My mom was like beaten and like sexually abused and all her siblings. Like she was the oldest of 5, and she would lock her brothers and sisters in the closet when her father would come home. He broke all her ribs at one point, put her in ICU. They married her off to some guy at 13. He beat the shit out of her and took all her money. And the first 2 months, she had it annulled, and then she ran away because the state wanted her to go back to her family, who married her off in the first place.
Oh my God!
And she's like, I'm not doing that. So she found some woman to live with for room and board. She would watch the lady's kids all day while the lady was at work at 14 years old. Living on her own. And then she met my dad, who was 8 years older than her, and they hooked up and been together ever since. But my mom, I felt like it was more like lack of opportunity. They were very rural, very southern, a lot of mental health, family, medical issues, poverty. And then my father was a bit different. He was my grandfather was Army Air Corps. He actually got shot down on D-Day and was in a prison camp for 9 weeks in Romania. He landed on a fence when he was a bomber pilot.
Holy shit.
My dad was like a preemie baby, so he got a lot of like abuse like from the community. He was like bullied really bad because he was smaller. He had these big Coke bottle glasses. He kind of looked like the kid from the Christmas Story, like with the big glasses, like just always catching shit from everybody. But they had very different personalities. My mom's like much more like subdued, and my dad's personality is very much more like mine, like more aggressive, more like dominant. I think I had a pretty good childhood, I felt, up until we moved. We lived in more of like a subdivision of community of people and kids our age and stuff. And then my mom fell and broke her back. She got a settlement, had a bunch of surgeries, was in and out of the hospital like my whole childhood, like up until I was like 15, 16. And my dad was a small business owner. He had an Arnold bread route, and like Arnold bread and Intamin's donuts and Thomas the English muffins. I used to like go on the bread route with him when I was a kid. But we moved to like basically the middle of nowhere, out of like almost by County 208 over in St. Augustine, which is like close to World Golf before World Golf was a thing. So there's nothing out there. So I felt very isolated. And I didn't get the interaction with kids that I needed. And the kids that were in my neighborhood were all very different than me. They were very, like, I really liked to read books and, like, play with dolls. And all the kids down the road, like, even the girls, they liked guns and, like, hunting and just, like, they were, like, country people. And they were all related. So, like, if one of them didn't like you, none of them liked you. And I wouldn't say they didn't like me, but I just didn't really fit in.
You didn't have the same interests.
Yeah. So
St. Augustine's a different world over there.
It is a different world. It's a really nice town, though. It is. But that was where like I got into all my trouble. I was a great student. I was an honor student. I didn't have support at home, and I felt like I got a lot of accolades at school that were deserved. And I was like, okay, somebody sees me. This is great. And then I kind of went through a phase where I was a little heavier. My family tried to call me Fatty G. It's like the worst nickname I've ever heard. It's like the ghetto strip club. Like, next on stage is Fatty G.
My God.
And what sucked was after a while, everybody got comfortable calling me it, so the kids in the neighborhood started to call me that too. And it kind of messed with me. I had when I hit 13, I started with like an eating disorder. Remember that movie, Miss Congeniality, came out?
I
She
remember
ate
that
fucking
movie.
carrot sticks and celery. So I tried that. I don't like celery, so I was down to like carrot sticks. I lost a bunch of weight my 8th grade year. And it was really weird to see like the dynamic with how different my family treated me once I went from being like the ugly stepsister to like more like Cinderella. And I think it had a profound effect on the way I view myself and the way I view my interactions with other people, particularly with men.
How did it impact how you treated men and your interactions with them?
I felt that I didn't have any value if I wasn't, pretty, if I didn't have the aesthetic, to bounce off of. And listen, if as a girl, if you're not gonna be hot, you better be funny, right? So that I think any girl that's ever gonna be a hot girl should have to go through a minimum of a year and a half of like being the ugly duckling, just for good personal growth and development, right?
Of course.
Personality.
Right. Understanding the other side.
Right.
Yeah. So you received this, from your brother, from your brothers, from your father, these jokes about, nicknames, Fatty G. Is that why you were so out for men, or at least in terms of needing that validation?
Yeah, I believe so, because I realized that my dad really didn't even want anything, which I thought was still kind of weird. My dad didn't even really want anything to do with me until, like, I slimmed up. He's kind of got, like, I think because he was so thin as a kid and so he was, like, tall and lanky, he's got, like, a thing with fat. So to me, it was like, okay, so in order to be accepted and loved even within my own family dynamic, I must look a certain way, right? Yeah.
How old were you when you moved to New Orleans?
So I moved to New Orleans as an adult. I grew up in St. Augustine, Florida, until I got sober.
Okay.
I left St. Augustine when I got sober.
Okay. So then what was high school like for you in St. Augustine?
High school was great. I was an honor student. I took some of the AP and dual enrollment classes. So I had a full academic scholarship. I participated in ROTC. I really enjoyed it. I was one of those people too, though, that I had a lot of friends, but I didn't really belong in one circle. I never really have kind of like float.
Hybrid.
Yeah. Yeah, I hung out with the stoners and the druggies because I was one. And then I hung out with all the smart kids because I was one. And then I hung out with the kids that were older than me because they had affiliations with my my youngest brother. So yeah, I was definitely a mix. It was fun for me for the most part. Like I didn't really start having issues until after my junior year. I had a heat stroke at ROTC camp, and I remember the doctor was like trying to explain the gravity. He's like, "You had a stroke." He's like, "You're 17, you had a stroke." I remember him saying it over and over, like, "You had a stroke," and I'm like, okay, it was hot out there. Like, what do you want from me? And you trying to convey to me, hey, like, you need to take time off. You need to, like, prioritize some things. And you should probably do follow-up care. We didn't have insurance, medical insurance. Yeah. So my parents were always like, you're fine. You're going to be okay.
Get back out there.
Yeah. And then as, like, time went on, I started to have these, like, chronic things that were coming up. I also believe that some of it was trauma. I was sexually molested by my boss at my job when I was 15. He gave me drugs and raped me, and then told everybody in the building that he did it, and everybody basically said that I was a whore, and he got a promotion. Fuck you, Domino's. Fuck you.
Oh my God. I'm sorry to hear that.
So that was another thing that was my first physical encounter with a man. He was 30 and I was 15. He was 32 or something. And I was 15. So again, it was another thing of like what is inherently wrong with me that people believe that it's okay to treat me this way, right? Yeah. I forgot what we were talking about.
Thank you for sharing that. You had said that you were also...
the trauma. Yeah. So I never dealt with it. Like, I told the owner of the facility knew, and he was kind of like, oh, well, you shouldn't have fucked him. And I was like, what are we talking about? I didn't tell anybody about it. For the first time I went public with it was on Ian's show. I had only ever told 2 people about it, which was my husband at the time and then my best friend, Kira.
Oh, my God.
Like, even when the investigation, I just wanted it to go away because, like, we told my parents about it, and that was what my mom said when they called. And I think they were calling because they were like, hey, so we heard there's been this incident with your child with an adult. We want to know how you want to handle it. And what I felt like they were really asking was, are you going to sue us? Like, are you taking us to court, and can we settle now? My mom said, I just want it to disappear. I don't want to deal with it. So that kind of made me feel, too, like, okay, so it's not even worth it to say anything to anybody because, like, it wasn't only me. It was, like, 3 or 4 other girls. I think I was the only one he actually raped when that was a child. But I know there were other incidents, you know, where he would like fondle us like while we were on the, and like it was so weird because it was like in the middle of the restaurant, like I'm on the phone talking to a customer, and he would come up behind us and he would do it to the girl next to me.
Jesus.
You know, it was weird.
So you said you hung out with the druggies as well. What kind of drugs were you doing around this time?
So I started smoking pot in 8th grade. I swear up and down, and I'm not trying to be an advocate for marijuana, right? But smoking pot saved my life because I wasn't eating, like, at all. I went from, like, 150 pounds to, like, 100 pounds in a school year. And I wasn't, like, active really doing much. And then I remember in my freshman year of high school, I linked up with a friend who I knew her because her mom worked at a store that my dad serviced, like as a bread vendor. So we had a class together, and she was smoking pot and I was smoking pot, whereas all the smart kids weren't smoking pot, and this was like my chorus class. So we started hanging out, and they were all doing like ecstasy and stuff. So I tried ecstasy, and there was like a 6-week period where every weekend we would go roll, and like. I remember by the end of like the school year, I'm like, dude, I could feel like holes in my brain. I just do not feel right. So I quit hanging out over there, and I quit doing that. I started smoking pot at night after I come home from work. I'd like get high and watch Family Guy when it first came out.
Yeah, of course.
And then I would go eat. So I was able to maintain a healthy weight. I got into like walking a lot and running and like really taking care of myself. And I was able to kind of develop personally as a little bit of an athlete. Started doing powerlifting and stuff like that, and you know, weight training. I did a little bit of cross country with a friend of mine. That was kind of a motivator for me, but I never participated in it as a sport, like within the school. It was more like I would tinker with friends. You understand what I'm saying? But it really helped me develop a sense of who I was and like what I enjoyed and what I felt like a resting point for my body should have been.
Yeah. Were you doing any other hard drugs with that? Like oxys or any of that?
Not at that
But you
point.
did have oxy in your story.
Yes, but not
That's
till
later
later
on until you got hurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
After my senior year of high school, I woke up on my 18th birthday with my first day of withdrawal. I had no idea what was going on. I thought I had the flu.
How did you get there to a withdrawal? How did you get even introduced to painkillers?
So my brother had an oxy problem, but I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know what was going on. He was like 6 years older than me. I know he had been in and out of jail. He'd had some problems, you know, with it. And I'd seen him do it and it not affect him really bad. And I'd seen people that had horrible pain do it and feel better, right? Well, the time that I got hurt I graduated 2005, so it would have been 2004. And that's kind of when Oxycontin was being pushed in Florida. They even had like an Oxycontin for children. So and because I didn't have, so after my heat stroke, right, I had these episodes where like I would vomit for like 2 weeks. I would get to the point where I was gray and I was going to kidney and liver failure. And my parents never wanted to take me to a doctor because they didn't have any money. You know, they didn't have medical insurance. So what would happen is I became known as the puker in the emergency room. They would cycle me in and out. Because I would go through these phases and they didn't want the bill. So they would just wait and hope it would get better. And if it didn't get better, I'd have to go to the emergency room. And by the time I got there, I was so sick and dehydrated and incorrigible that it was extremely difficult to treat me as a patient. So, and I was scared. You know, I was like 17 years old. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. So then they started like giving me Xanax. They started giving me Dilaudid, IV. They ended up to the point where they referred me to pain management. They were sending me home from the hospital with pills. And yeah, they were just so accessible. And it was crazy because I remember the doctor saying, hey, just take them and you'll feel better. And I did. I was like, oh, my God, they really know what they're doing. They know what they're talking about. I feel great, you know. And a few months later, you know, you realize it's more consistent, you know. It's not sporadic. It's like I was pre-gaming for pain. That makes sense? Where like, oh, I'm anticipating having pain, so we're just going to go, hey, we're going to cut it off before it starts. And that was really how it started for me.
Yeah, and then you were on probably a cycle where you were taking them no matter what every couple hours.
Yeah.
To the point where your body needed it at all times just to feel normal.
Yeah.
Were you getting energy when you took them?
Absolutely.
So was I.
Someone was like, how's ADHD like now? And I was like, oh my God, I feel so seen.
I can think very clear right now. I was an opiate guy when I used to do oxys. So I was undiagnosed ADHD.
I was too.
Up until
like mildly autistic too, and I didn't find that out until I was an adult. It's like I thought I was unique. I thought I was fun. I'm just autistic.
Yeah. So, and then I would take oxy, and I would get so much energy. Everyone's like, "Oh, I want to go to sleep." I would just puke, and they're not that fun. I'm like, "Are you out of your fucking mind?"
I'm stretching. I'm doing shit. I'm rearranging my whole room.
Bro, I will clean your house. Like, no problem. Yes. No questions asked.
That's like my favorite thing to do.
I know.
I got shit
scary.
to do, so I'm going to go do some oxys because it's going to give me the energy to do what I need to do. And I'm going to feel better.
Exactly. And I would think straight. And I had no idea what was, like, I was just like, whatever. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did you get to the point now? I understand your usage, how it built up from 17 to 18, but how did you get in a position where you had to stop using pain pills and you started to detox and you felt that for the first time?
So my 18th birthday, I woke up on my first day of withdrawal, and once I realized what it was, I was disgusted with myself because I was like, I never viewed myself as a drug addict, right? And the fact that I had that, like, hey, you physically need this drug even though you don't want to take it. I tried to withdraw and like detox myself. It was horrible. I ended up in the hospital, like in and out. And it was just kind of like a never-ending cycle of I know I cannot keep doing this. I need to stop. I can't stop. I don't know how. I would have like a couple weeks or a couple days, and then someone would come through, or, you know, I would have a bad spell, a bad run. I'd go to the emergency room and they'd write me something, because this is when you could get like anything. Like the emergency room, oh, you want 30 Oxy 30s? No problem. As soon as I hit 18, they referred me to pain management. And then once I hit 21, I was doing like the pill mill thing. It got crazy.
Wild.
And you know, addiction's a disease, right? Because it's got a set course if left untreated. So mine progressed very much the way that you would think an opiate problem would progress. Like everything that you see in the movies and like you hear people talk about, especially females, I experienced all those things.
Yeah. Same. Let me ask you, when you would try to get clean or sober off of pain meds, how would you go back? What would be the thought that would go through your head that would kind of rope you back in?
A lot of times it was I had been sick because I had horrible withdrawals. Like it's crazy because I still talk to people about it. They're like, "Oh, that's bullshit. I only detoxed for 3 days." Fuck you. You were lucky. Okay, I withdrew for 3 weeks where I shit on myself and threw up everywhere and was. Like my muscles would be so locked up because I've got some muscle issues from some accidents that had never been treated. And I had like a hip that was high, which made my legs short from an accident my dad had that I'd been trapped in the truck. And like, this is 10 years later, right? I was like 10 years old when that happened. Fast forward to 20. None of this shit's been corrected. And I've got major issues within my muscle system. So now my body's off kilter. And I'm running around like a feral Florida woman, because I was, you know. And I'm just doing more damage to myself and never taking time to rest and to heal. Yeah. So it was all just throwing wood on the fire.
Right.
You know?
I used to always... So with the detox, my detox mentally, physically, I probably felt better within a couple weeks, like you said. Mentally, I wasn't right for like 6 months to a year.
I was going to say, it took me like a solid year before I got any like real clarity. Yeah. Had it not been for the rooms and treatment, dude, I would have been one of those people who I never would have been able to make it.
I like saying that on my podcast because... people get clean and sober and it's like a month in and they're like, I still don't feel good. When am I going to feel better? I feel like complete dog shit.
How long did you use for, bro?
Right.
Did you use for 10 years and avoid trauma for 5 years before that? Because that's what I did.
Well, it's crazy because, look, let's say it takes a year.
Right.
It may seem like forever, and it's going to be
really
forever.
Fast, though.
It is fast.
Compared to how you snowballed and burned your life to the ground.
But it's worth it.
Absolutely.
After that year, once you start feeling better and you start genuinely smiling in recovery and in sobriety, that's the best fucking feeling in the world.
I smile more now than I ever have in my life.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's wild. So after, you know, you're kind of back and forth at 18 years old, trying to stop, then you're going back. What happens from there with your drug and alcohol use?
So I had some periods where I did harm reduction. I tried the methadone clinic, which was difficult for me because I was constantly wrecking my cars. I never was a big fan of methadone. I always felt like it was too strong for me. I would go to the clinic and I would dose at 30 milligrams, which is the lowest that they gave you coming in. And that would be at like 7 o'clock. By 10 o'clock, I'm nodding off, standing up. But by 7:30 that night, I'm withdrawing. So I think I just, with my high metabolizer, but it always made me veer away from the clinic because I would try to phase off and get off of it really quickly, and I'd be sober for a little bit, and then I go back to the pills because I'm not treating any of the physical things or the emotional trauma that I have, and I'm hanging out with all the same people. If nothing changes, right?
Yeah, people, places, and things.
Yeah.
You're not changing your environment. You're not changing the behaviors and who you are.
Yeah, who I was fucked up at a fundamental level, and it was like a knot of jewelry, right? Like imagine like all your wife's necklaces just jumbled up, and you're trying to figure out where do you start, right? Where do you start to get this under control and to literally straighten things out?
It's overwhelming.
It's very overwhelming.
And that's why a lot of people don't. Not only do you fear the withdrawal, but it's also daunting to get sober. Because like me, I never paid any of my bills.
Yeah.
I would call my credit card. I had a credit card somehow. And I knew I was over the limit, but I would call them for like an increase.
How old were you at this point?
Like 18, 19, 20,
Yeah.
maybe 21, around there.
Yeah.
And I used to like pull the phone away when they would tell me my balance because I just didn't want to hear it. And then when the guy would get on the phone, I'd be like, hi, I want to increase my limit.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to deal with any of the destruction. It's daunting. When did you have any issues with the law?
I did. So when I think I was about 21. I had a son in 2009 with someone I'd been in and out of a relationship with for like 4 years at that point. And 6 months after I had him, so I was on opiates before I got pregnant. Then I was off of them for a little bit, had some traumatic stuff come up. I got back on. Then I went to Suboxone for a little while, and I got pregnant while I was on Suboxone. Okay. So I did Suboxone, from a very low dose of Suboxone. I was on like 4 milligrams of Suboxone the whole time I was pregnant. Then when I got, like almost within like a couple months of me having the baby, I was so overwhelmed. I had no idea how to raise a child or to be a mother, as I hadn't really had the example. Like my parents were physically present, right? And like I think they did the very best that they could, and I'm not angry at them anymore about stuff. But like if you don't know what you don't know, right? And I just couldn't function. I could barely take care of myself. I really couldn't take care of myself. And I had been put in this position where I was with this child all day and all night long with no like help, no real support. So I went back to pills because I needed that numbing and I needed to function and be able to clean the house and all these excuses and reasons that were very real in my mind and very real at that point in time in my life, right? But either way, my son was about 6 months old. He had colic and been up all night, and I took him to his mother's house so she would watch him so I could get some sleep. I go to my neighbor's house, was literally 2 doors down after. We sit and talk. While I'm there, I dose. I take my oxys, and I took a little bit of Xanax. And I was always written Xanax, but almost never took them because I didn't like the way they affected me. I had quite a few friends that died.
Yeah.
From the Holy Trinity, the Xanax, Somas, and the Oxys. Oof. So they made me nervous, but I really needed to sleep. So I took like just a little bit. And by the time I must have only been there 15, 20 minutes. But by the time I go 2 doors down, I realized how fucking inebriated I am. And I realized I wasn't allowed to have a house key at the time. I lived with my kid's dad. And like, we were both fucking toxic. Let's just leave it at that, right? But so what I would do is I would take the key. We had the back door locked, and it didn't have like a latch. You put the key inside from the inside to be able to unlock and lock it. So I would just take it out and then would come back in through that way. And I forgot it. So he worked at a hospital that was like a mile away. So if anybody's in the St. Augustine area, I lived in the first gate to St. Augustine South, across from where like the old Food Lion and where the McDonald's is. I was going to Flagler Hospital. It's literally like 2 lights away. Mm-hmm. I knew I was fucked up. I had no business driving. in my mind, then I was trying to justify it because I was like, I can just get in and out. I need to be able to get in the house. I want to just go lay down. But I decided to drive, and instead of taking US 1, I took the back roads, and I hit a 16-year-old girl that was walking her dog in the road. I was so inebriated that when it happened, I thought I hit a mailbox at first. I didn't know what happened. And I remember like looking around, and I saw this dog in the road, and he was limping, and I was like, I just hit someone's dog. And I left. I never got out. I never checked. I never, And then it was crazy because like I ended up going to my parents' house because I was in a friend's car. It wasn't even my car. And I realized that the windshield was busted. I kept trying to figure out, how did I bust the windshield if I hit a dog? I just don't understand. I go to my parents' house, and it's like a movie, right? Like I turn on the TV. It's a beautiful day outside. There's no reason why a satellite shouldn't work, but it doesn't because they don't have like cable or internet like out. Like they were still having dial-up out there at this time. It's like 2009, right? Middle of nowhere. On the news, it just happens to be like the 5 o'clock news. They're like, breaking news from St. Augustine South. A pedestrian is hit by a driver in a hit and run. I was like, damn, that's right down the road from my house. And as there's people talking about their discrepancies and what kind of car they saw and what happened, and then they mentioned the dog. And I was like, oh my God, I fucking killed somebody. Yeah. I didn't know how to process it. And I'm like, I'm high as a kite still. You know,
the 16-year-old passed.
No.
I
thought I killed her.
someone.
So they just said, "Hey, you know, she's been life-lighted. She's got critical injuries." What's really crazy is my kid's dad X-rayed her when she came in through the hospital. He X-rayed her foot because she had like I think 50 stitches and staples to her head and person, and she had I don't know exactly what the injuries were to her foot. I was very lucky that I didn't hurt her more. And like, I say that very loosely because I don't know what kind of damage I did to her and her family emotionally, psychologically. And just because like you only have 50 stitches and staples, which is a fucking lot, right? Like it's like getting hit by a Mack truck. Like that, even if that heals well and fine, like what type of scars do those leave and how do those affect that person long term? Yeah. After I got sober, I tried a couple times to reach out to my victim after all my stuff was completed, and she never responded. So I kind of I didn't want her to feel, you know, like I was pushing if she didn't want that. But I did want to say, hey, I know what I did was horrible. And like, I want to give you the opportunity to tell me what I did to you and your family, and if there's any way that I can make it better, I would like to do that in any capacity that I can.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, that's really the reason why I podcast. I stayed away from telling my story for a long time because I never wanted people to think that I was trying to gain any type of like exposure or make money off of what I did. Yeah. It's interesting.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. No, I can see the tears in your eyes. So I know that I know the immense process in recovery. And you reach out to that person. If they want to talk to you, they will talk to you. If they don't, they don't. Yeah. You did take the action to follow up and try to take accountability. Yeah. So, listen, you are not trying to monetize this story or talk, you know, you're sharing this to help another person. Yeah. That's how I see it. Yeah. You are sharing this story to help the listener who, let's say a week from now, they're on Xanax and Oxys and they're thinking about driving, and then they think of your story about what could potentially happen. Yeah. So you're saving a life by sharing this story.
Or maybe they're the person that did the same thing I did, or they're the family member of a person who was hit and injured or killed in a hit and run, or they are the person who was hit and injured in a hit and run. You know, I feel like there's power in the truth and there's power in growth. And like, if like human beings, we all do things that are not our best moments, right? It's interesting too, right? Because for a long time I was like, well, why would I want to tell people about that when it's like the worst? Well, at that point it was like the worst thing that I experienced in my life because it's prior to the intervention, right? And I was like, why would I want to remind people? of that. And now it's like, I do want you to remember because I need to remember. I need to remember the insanity of what that was like for the days where the pain is really bad and my mind's telling me, hey, you don't have to go through this. Like, we can fix this, bro. Just we can fix this. You don't have to feel this way. It's going to be okay.
That's a disease.
Very scary.
That's very scary. You're at home now, and you see this on the news. You hear she was airlifted out of there. You know it's serious. What happens next? How were you caught? So
I call my friends, a friend of mine from high school. Her dad was a high-powered attorney in the area, and I was like freaking out. And I was like, hey, let's say hypothetically, I know the person who hit the person in St. Augustine South. And he's like, okay. I was like, what do they do? He's like, well, is that person at their parents' house where they own a small business? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that person might want to consider the fact that your parents could be like liable after the fact, especially if she dies, you become an accessory to like a vehicular manslaughter. So you might want to consider not having that vehicle there tied to them. So I moved the car, like I just kind of dropped it off down the road. We lived in like the middle of the woods, so I just found like a hunting trail and like maybe 2 miles from the house and just dropped because I didn't know what to do. I had my mom pick me up. She had no idea what was going on. I'm like walking down the middle of the road. Like at this point, there's always like some random thing going on with me. So I'm like, Mom, come help me. So she comes, she takes me back to my kid's dad's house and like I'm just pouring tears and I won't talk to her because I don't know. I honestly didn't know if I told them if they had an accountability to like a responsibility to tell the
Turn
police.
You in.
Right. And I like it wasn't so much I was worried about. I knew I was gonna fucking go to jail. I already knew. Of course. Right? Like there was no avoiding it. But either way, I go home. And, like, I try to pretend like things are fine. The next morning, I call my dad at, like, 5 it wasn't even 5. I think it was, like, 3 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. It was like, I did something real bad. I'm, like, stuttering because I can't get it out. And he's like, all right. He had, like, a gun go missing, I guess, from the house. But I was never into stuff like that. I never needed to trade physical things usually for drugs or anything.
Of course.
So I was like, no, it wasn't me. And he's like, okay, well, has it got something to do with that car you've been driving? He's like, yeah. Is it stolen? No. He was like, I don't want to talk to you about it over the phone. I'm going to come meet you. So I had my friend, I had a childhood friend that lived 2 doors down from me. She picked me up because she was going that way for work. And she dropped me off. I helped my dad service the store, and I'm just leaking tears the whole time. My mom's, like, standing around because she knows I won't talk to her about it. I'm going to talk to my dad. So we finally get in the truck. And my dad lights a cigarette, and I'll never fucking forget this. It's clear as day in my head. And he's hitting it for a minute, and he's just like, you just see the stress on his face because he knew I'd never come to them with something like this before, right? And he's like, so you said it was about that car. He's like, did you hit something? No. Did you hit someone? Yes. You goddamn kids are going to kill me. Because mind you, my brother had been in prison and had just come home.
Oxy guy, right?
Yeah. My brother had just come home from prison. And he's like, you hit someone and you left. And I told him what happened. He goes, we got to turn you in. And I was like, well, how do we do that? I was like, I didn't want media there because I knew that it was going to come out, right? But I felt like it was so much shame on me and like my family. But I also felt like, dude, this girl's family deserves to know and to have some peace. And like at this point, there was like no updates on her. But long story short, I tell my dad, I tell everybody. My dad immediately tells my mom immediately tells my brother tells his girlfriend. By the end of the day, most people in St. Augustine's a small town, bro. End of the day, 30 people knew that it was me, which, I mean, it's neither here nor there, right? But, like, this is where my head is at the time. Like, I'm so stressed because, like, now what do I do? We called an attorney. We originally called Alexander Christini because my brother had used him a lot to get, like, 17, 18 felonies, like, all thrown out. And when we called, he wasn't in office, and my brother didn't listen to. He let my fucking brother do it because he knew him, and he didn't listen to the rest of the message. It was like, hey, if this is an emergency, call my cell phone. So we called a new attorney who was Terry Shoemaker. And he basically said, hey, they don't have I was like, hey, I want to turn myself in. I'm the person who did this. Like, can you help facilitate this? He's like, yeah. It's like Friday. I think the accident was Friday, so it's a Saturday morning. And he calls me back because he's like, hey, we'll do it by like noon. So noon comes and goes, and I call him back, and he's like, yeah, we're going to do it this evening, like 5 o'clock. I got some stuff going on. I'll call you back, and we'll meet then. 5 o'clock comes and goes. I call him. He goes, hey, listen, there's not even an investigator assigned to the case. They don't know anything. We're going to wait till Monday. Let's wait till Monday, see what happens with her. And I was thinking, too, dude, if I go to jail, they might hold me in case she dies because it's a different charge if I killed her. And like I've got this 6-month-old baby, and like my poor parents are like, we want to help you. We don't want to aid in a crime. We don't want to do the wrong thing. Like the blind leading the blind here. So we listened to the attorney. My mom ended up getting to the point where I don't know why, but she's like, if you don't tell Nick, I'm going to tell him. So I went and told my kid's dad, and he's like, oh my God, you hit a person. Like I x-rayed that person. She was really hurt. You did that? And it was more in preparation for if they kept me, because I figured Monday I'm going to turn myself in and I might not get a bond. I might not get I didn't know. I'd never been arrested. I'd never been in trouble before. I didn't know what to expect. And my brother's like, yeah, you're going to prison. Like you're fucking, you passed go. You're not collecting $200, buddy. You're going straight to jail. But yeah, so I tell Nick, and then I was actually working for an addiction doctor at the time. And I went to tell, it was me and this one other girl at the front desk, and I went over there and told her, hey, like I might not be in Monday. I had something happen. I got to turn myself in. And she knew my car and where I lived. And she was like, oh my God, that was you. We saw it on the news. Her husband had like 3 felony strikes. I guess I was looking at going back to prison. So as soon as I left, he called the police and told them, hey, I know the girl. And I had even told her, like, I don't want you to think like that it's that, because I was trying to like disassociate myself from like what had been on the news until I actually had a chance to turn myself in. And I was like, we're going to turn myself in, which is why I like won't be there. And he told the police that he knew it was me. She took them originally to Nick's house, and Nick was like coming out of like a drunk night at the bar, like 2 a.m. when the police get there. He puts me on speakerphone. He's like, hey, remember the accident you had? The police are here. They want to know where the car is, because they needed the car to arrest me. I didn't know that. You know, and in my mind, too, I'm like, well, I was going to turn myself in. It would look pretty shitty to not cooperate if I told them my plan was to turn myself in, which it was. Like, okay, whatever, it's done. Let's just get it done with. Let's just do this. But he sends the police out to my house, and they're asking me about the car, and they're like, hey, if you give us the car, we'll let you turn yourself in at noon on Monday like you planned. If you don't give me the car, I'm going to arrest you now. He couldn't arrest me now because he didn't have any evidence. He had hearsay. But I didn't know what to do. I'm looking at my brother, looking at my dad, and I kept saying, like, hey, I'd like my attorney. And they just kept pressuring me to give him the car. So finally my dad's like, so I gave him the car. We showed him where it was. And as soon as I gave him the car, they're like reading me my Miranda rights. I was like, yeah, I should have known. But it didn't really matter, because at the end of the day, like, I'm like one of those guilty conscience people, so it would have eaten me alive had I gotten away with it. Never in my mind in a million years did I think I was going to. I knew it was going to very quickly, I was going to get arrested, and I deserved to. But I got arrested, I bonded out right away, and I spent 2 years on bond, and my addiction got progressively worse. At the point in time where I had the accident, I was kind of vacillating between doing the Suboxone Oxy dance, where 5-6 days out of the week, I would do 4 milligrams of Suboxone, and that one day out of the week, I would do 300 to 500 milligrams of oxycodone, and a lot of times I did it all at once. I do 10 pills at once, because I was just trying to get to a certain place. It was just a lot faster to just rail them all at once than it was, to like nickel and dime them and have one run out by the time the other kicks in.
Yep.
So by the time I got sentenced so my accident was in, I believe, June of 2009. I was sentenced in March of 2011. By the time I got sentenced, I had a minimum of a 900 milligram a day oxy habit. I needed, for sure, 30s a day, 10 at a time, 3 times a day, just to function, just to be somewhat normal. If I wanted to catch a buzz, I had to do like 40 or 50 of them.
This is when blues were real.
Yeah.
Before they were fentanyl.
Yeah. I had 12 doctors in 1 month. Like, there were days where I'd go down to Orlando. I hit 2 doctors in the same day, and all of them were giving me the legal limit.
Jesus
Every single one of them. Every single doctor I had gave me the legal limit. I was basically, it amounted to like, I think it was 150 Oxy 30s and like 150 Oxy 15s, plus another 90 Xanax, 90 Somas, 90 Adderall.
Insane.
Yeah. And the only thing I really wanted was the Oxys. And all the other stuff I just used to barter to get more Oxy.
Yep.
Right? Because it had become such a racket for me.
Right. You wanted that clean high.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are out on bond for 2 years. You go back. What do they sentence you to, and what is that experience like?
So they sentenced. So I remember, I'll never forget my sentencing. I was high as a kite, and the girl's family gets up there, and they tell me what a horrible person I am. And at the time, I was like vacillating between I really deserve that, and I really felt that at my core, to like, fuck, it was an accident, bro. Like, have you never had a bad day? But this was way, my behavior was way past a bad day, right? But this is my sick mentality at the time.
Yeah.
So she sentences me. Judge Berger was who sentenced me. It was crazy because when I had my first appearance in front of her, she says, "Oh, I remember this case. I remember your brother. I don't like him and I don't like you." I was like, "Recuse yourself!"
Oh,
no, it wasn't happening. They didn't fucking care. So she sentenced me to, and so this is interesting too. So Alexander Christini ended up being my attorney, right? We were going to suppress the car because there was an issue because I asked for an attorney and I had been denied one. He wanted to suppress the car. Well, while I went and did some treatment, I did like a 30-day treatment because I was getting to the point where my parents thought I was going to die. So my dad sold one of his stores and my grandma split it with him and they sent me to treatment for 30 days. I did really well in treatment, and it was one of those treatments where it's like, hey, you don't have to work steps. Like, you can do whatever you want here. It's real loosey-goosey.
Just take a break.
Yeah. Like, get prepped up for your next run. Yeah. Right, was kind of what I felt. And that's not where my head was at the time, right?
Yeah.
But I remember them even telling me at one point, one of the people, the peer facilitators or counselors there had said, "Hey, you've got some legitimate back issues and some legitimate pain issues. How are you going to manage your pain pill use when you leave here?" And I was like, "Oh, I can manage. Yeah, that sounds good." But dude,
that's the worst thing an addict could hear.
I know. By the time, and again, it wasn't his fault, right? And I have to preface this and say this to myself because I feel like for a long time, and I was just telling this to somebody earlier today. I remember one of the most profound things I heard when I first went to the rooms was, every time I tell my story, it changes. I remember thinking as a newcomer, well, you must be lying. That's not what she meant. What she meant was, dude, I have a disease of perception, and every time I tell my story and I get farther away from the experience and I get the clarity of who I am today and the sobriety that I have today, I start to realize that my perception was skewed, and I start to see the situation for what it actually was versus what I felt and believed it was. Feelings are not fact, right? But I run off my feelings, especially when I was in this trauma survival mode at this point in my life. But it was interesting because, just looking back on it, it's like there was so much wreckage for everybody. And for the longest time, I felt like I'm only hurting myself, and everybody around me is doing it, and the doctors give it to me, so it's okay. But whose responsibility is if the doctor comes to you and says, "Hey, this is acid. I think it's going to be good for you to pour it on your skin. It's going to fuck you up, but you should do it because I say so." Maybe I should do some research first. Maybe I should get a second opinion. But I never did any of that. And I blamed my economic situation and not having insurance. But at the end of the day, it's my personal responsibility to know that the things that I put into my body and the things I bring into my home and the things that I introduce into my family, whatever aspect that is, aren't detrimental to any of us. And I didn't do that because I was so desperate for relief. I didn't care what form and what package it came in. Little green package was fine for me. Mm-hmm. Forgot what your actual question was.
No. So you were just talking about the time that you were out on bail, and then all right. So you go to the 30-day treatment facility. You take a break. You continue using after it.
Yeah, I come back. I relapse immediately.
How many years did they give you?
She sentenced me to 3 years of prison time, 2 years of house arrest, and then she revoked my driver's license for life, and then I had community service and $10,000 in restitution.
Okay, what happened to the girl?
So she had 50 stitches and staples to her head in person, and then I think she needed physical therapy on her foot, but she spent like 1 or 2 nights in the hospital and was released.
Okay, she's okay.
I have people in the community that knew her and said that, like, I heard that she had her own issues after the accident, and it sucked because I felt I put that on her.
Yeah.
Because had I not run her over, she wouldn't have needed to go that route. And it's not my story to tell, and I've not talked, so I'm trying to tell the story without telling the story, if you know what I mean?
Of course.
But I had my best friend from high school, her sister went to school with that girl, and they said too, the thing I remember most about what they said about me was when I ended up taking an elevator ride with them, like for my first or second appearance, and I didn't know. And my mom had even said, leaving the elevator, hey, I think that might have been the girl. Like, she had a scar on her face. I didn't know. I was too busy worrying about myself to notice the girl in the elevator with me and why her mom was staring at me like that. But they told my friend's sister, we didn't expect her to look like that. Like, we thought she was going to be some, like, drunken slob, and, like, it threw us off and made us angry that she came in looking presentable and not how we anticipated her to look. I think they had a vision of what the villain that did this to, and I understand that, looked like, and then I didn't fit that bill, so I think it caused confusion. Yeah. Because I think maybe, and this again, I wasn't told this, but my perception of it is maybe they saw a little bit of themselves in me and they didn't want to because they were so angry at me. And how could you not be? How could you not be? Of course. But so they sentenced me. I go to prison, and I'd never had any. I was sentenced to prison Tuesday morning. I was in prison Thursday, and they transported me and one other person, and that was it. And they always made them wait. But I think my parents were telling the jail, hey, if she dies in there, we're gonna sue you, because her problem is so fucking bad. If she dies in there, we're gonna sue you. So then I detoxed in prison, and they ended up having to, like, black box me and take me because I hadn't been classified yet. So they took me out in an ambulance with the 2 armed guards, handcuffed and shackled with a box. And I was in the hospital for 3 days with a central line through my leg, with them giving me Dilaudid to try to, and like a bunch of fluids and stuff to recoup because I was going to kidney and liver failure because my detox was so bad. And, prison was prison. I was at Lowell, which is the largest women's prison in the country, at least state facilities and population-wise. And it is the most notorious for sex crimes against inmates from staff. So.
This is in Florida?
In Ocala. Yeah. We actually did a mini documentary with the Miami Herald. Her name was Julie Brown. She actually covered the Epstein case as well. There's like 13 of us that got together and did this thing, and then we sued like later after we were released and stuff. But I did my whole time on that compound. I had a mix of jobs. I had some privileged jobs. Like, I was a library attendant. I was the VP orderly, and then I was the admin orderly. And I worked inside grounds. I worked the kitchen. I was a dorm worker. I literally did almost every job on that facility. I made some really good friends in there. I had a couple fights. I learned a lot about human nature and about mental health issues that I had not learned before because of the exposure. I also learned how poverty and segregation from a social and economic standpoint affects people and how they end up in there.
What was rehabilitation like, and do you feel like the state provided you with enough rehabilitation that you needed?
We didn't get any rehabilitation. Dude, you couldn't get pads in there. Like, you couldn't get the first night I puked all over my bunk because I woke up withdrawing, and they told me that they couldn't do anything for me. I couldn't get a new bedroll. Like, I didn't have a bra when I came in. Like, it was just ridiculous. And then what sucked was, after a while, I realized that in order to get anything done, you had to go various different connections. And you had to be pretty to really make anything happen on that compound through the staff, most of the staff, which is predominantly male. You have like 85, 90% male officers around a bunch of women, And the culture of that facility was just not. Like, in order to rehabilitate that facility, you'd have to shake it around, move every inmate and move every officer and bring them in from all over and totally restructure the way that they organize that facility.
How did you learn about mental health then while you were in prison?
Watching people that didn't have access to mental health counselors, watching people who didn't have access to their medications, and watching people go from like normal to skitzing out because they became institutionalized or because they were having severe flashbacks, CPTSD. It was just a lot, it was a lot.
Were you using drugs and drinking?
No, not at all. As soon as when I was sentenced, I brought in like 50 oxys and like 20 or 30 methadone.
You have kahunas, man.
I was like, what are you going to do? Send me to prison? I'm already going.
Oh, my God.
They never caught me. I literally just dropped it in, like, the lining of my pants, and then when they came in to dress me out, as soon as the lady turned her back, I pulled my stuff and kicked it in the corner, and then she's like, oh, I didn't see you take it off. Can you step back and shake it out? So I did, and the pill bottle was over in the corner. So as soon as she turned back around, I put my shit on and threw them in my pants and fucking went and was zooted through, because I was in like holding, I guess, or not holding, but it's like set where they segregate you for the first 24 hours to classify you even while you're in jail. Yeah. So by the time, I brought in like 10 or 20 Suboxone strips too, but I never took any of them. But I basically ate all the methadone I had as soon as they kicked my bunk. I expected to have more time. I thought that I was going to have like a few weeks, because there were people who said they've been waiting 8 weeks to go after they've been sentenced. And I was glad I didn't, because I think I probably would have died in that facility. So that was the good thing about prison, was you had the ability to walk the compound. So all these different people were seeing how sick I was and how ill I was. And finally, like, enough people were saying something to where they took some action. And I was able to get some medical treatment.
Okay. And you're in there for 3 years. What was it like after you got out?
It was confusing, and it was really scary, because I knew what I was going back to. I knew that, like, my family was still the family system was severely broken, and all the people I was about to be around had done no work on themselves, and neither had I, really, right? I had gotten to the point where I could take accountability for what I had done, and I could see it for what it was, but I wasn't at the point where I was like healing, working steps, working through trauma. I was just acknowledging that it existed, right? That was essentially my prison experience, acknowledging that all these things are not right and distancing myself from this sick family system that we had, created.
Like a sense of awareness, but not taking action. And you were going back into a very toxic atmosphere.
Correct.
So you were in fear.
Scared. Yeah, I was really scared. I pen paled the last 9 months that I was there, because I knew I needed money, because I was going to have nowhere to go and no car and no one to take me to work. So I walked out of prison with a little over 10 grand.
What is pen paling for people who don't know?
So there are websites. So when I was in, there was called Friends Beyond the Wall, and there was Write a Prisoner, and there was Paper Dolls. These are all websites online where, in the real world, because we didn't have internet access at all. Everything was pen and paper. We didn't have fucking MP3 players. Like, we barely had radio. Like, we didn't have shit. But essentially, you get somebody you write a blurb in a bio, and you get a good picture, and you get someone from the outside. You pay them to post your stuff, your blurb and your photo, and like why you went to prison and what you're looking for on this site, and people start to write you. And dude, I had such an influx of letters. Like, at the end of when we did mail call, they would just leave me for the end, and they would hand me like stacks of mail because so many people were writing me. It was interesting too, because I saw girls do hustles where they made, like, there's one girl made over $50,000 like literally every year, and she was like a long-term lifer. I had to cut checks, and so did she, because after a while your account gets so high they make you dump money, because you can only spend so much. You know what I mean? But
so you leave prison with 10 grand.
Yeah, I leave prison with a little over 10 grand. I'd spent a lot too, like, because I was like running cigarettes as the admin orderly, because I had a gate pass. So because for my crime, compared to, I'm at a maximum security prison, like Lowell is who I'm pretty sure housed Eileen Warnos before they killed her. They have a few death row inmates there now. But for that facility, I was very low-level risk. I'd never been arrested before. I was there for an accident. So I was I had privileges that other people didn't have. You know, like I could go out the gate and walk through the control room, and then I let somebody convince me that that was a way to make money, and it was extremely lucrative, especially since I never smoked. But it was just a lot, you know, like, and it sucked too. Like, if you were to ask me what my one regret in prison was, it's not that I made the money, right, or that I what I did, so like the woman that gave me that job at admin, her name was Miss Shiflett. I'll never forget this lady. I hope she sees this one day. I felt so bad when I got caught. Not because I got caught, not because I felt guilty with what I was doing. I let that lady down. And dude, that lady she believed in me. And it felt horrible because like I knew when I was doing what I was doing that if I got caught, that she was going to be so disappointed. And I also knew, too, that, like, it was really shitty of me because she went to bat for me. And I was a great admin orderly until I started doing this stuff. And even then, I was a great admin orderly. But once you get busted, it don't matter how good you were down there because you're using the fact that they trust you against them, right? And that felt bad. That didn't feel good, you know? But I honestly... If she hadn't been in the picture, I wouldn't have felt bad about it at all. I'm not even going to lie. Because they didn't give you access to anything. They didn't give you, like they said that there were programs for us to take. I never had the opportunity to do any of that. A lot of the people that I knew that were there 5-6 years didn't have the opportunity to get much of education or programming. And even if they did, it was so little and so ineffective that they were like, I'm just sitting there all day doing fucking busy work. Like,
it's not effective.
I'm not really healing. I'm not addressing the things that need to be addressed. I don't have a plan when I leave. I can't get classification or like the guidance people to set me up with a sober living. Dude, I had people on the outside do a lot of research for me for like halfway houses because I didn't want to go back to my family because I was just so scared of like how I was gonna respond, right? And what I was gonna do. But I couldn't find, like there was lots for men, but there was just nothing for us. And a lot of what there was, you had to be like a mom with children and DCF had to be involved, or you had to have a drug charge. I never had a drug charge. My actual charge was leaving the scene of an accident involving serious bodily harm. It's a 3rd-degree felony, punishable maximum by 5 years in jail. And I got maxed out. I did 5 years. I did 3 years in prison and then 2 years on house arrest. And then had to win an appeal when I came home to get my driver's license back. And that didn't happen. I was released 2013. That didn't happen until 2017, 2018. So it was just a lot.
So you get out 2013. Are you on house arrest? You ultimately end up going home or into a sober house?
I go home.
Okay.
I know there was no place for me anywhere.
Yeah. Did you start using immediately when you got back?
No. I tried really hard. I went back to my mom's for like 2 weeks. The first night I was there, I found a loaded needle that was so blue. So, dude, it must have had 50. And I remember the day I was looking for it. It was the day before I was getting sentenced. I knew I was out of pills, but I knew I had a rig that I had loaded before I left. And
it was still there.
Yeah.
3 years later.
Yeah, still under the dresser. And dude, if the spoon was full of stuff, I ran downstairs to give it to my mom only because I had community service and house arrest. I was going to meet my house arrest officer the next day. So I was like, had I not had that buffer, I probably would have done it. I probably would have died because it would have just been too much for me.
Yeah.
After 3 years of total abstinence from anything. But so I get in touch with Inmate Bank, which was Bank of America. I get them to cut me a check for the money that was in my account because they only release you with like $50, $100, something like that when you leave. So I had to wait for the check to come. And as soon as the check come, I found a house to live in that was like center of town because I knew I wasn't going to have a ride. So I got a bicycle. My fucking probation officer bought me a beach cruiser. And I was overweight. I went into prison like probably like a size 6, and I came out of prison like a size 16. I went in like 140 pounds, 5'10", like super thin, and came out just like total opposite. It looks like a square tire. But either way, I'm like, every day I'm like riding this beach cruiser to Sonny's. I worked at Sonny's for $8.50 an hour, and they put me in the kitchen once. They were going to hire me as a server, and then once they realized I had a felony, they put me in the kitchen. I had no experience in the kitchen.
Yeah.
No, like, and I had a heat stroke, and there was no, like, at 17, and there was no AC in the back. So I was like, oh my God, I'm probably going to die, but I have to have a job. So I guess we're going to roll the dice like I do with everything else in life.
Yeah.
But I would ride my bike 5 miles there and 5 miles back, and then 5 miles there and 5 miles back again because they worked me a split shift. So I would literally work all day to make like $70. It sucked. And then I had back child support because my son's father was taking care of my child, you know, while I was gone.
You have to pay him.
Mm-hmm. So I would literally work all week to make $40. I wouldn't even pay for like the gas to get me to where I needed to go. But either way, I got poked by a kitchen knife while I was there. It was like dirty from like the meat cutting, and with the sweat and the grease and like the heat from the kitchen, it turned into staph and MRSA, and they had to cut it out. And when they cut it out, they were like, hey, we're going to give you something for pain. I was like, well, hey, I was like an opiate addict for a while. It was oxys. It's been like 3 years. They're like, oh, you should be fine. It shouldn't affect you. And like, it really fucking hurt. So I was like, okay, go ahead. And after that, dude, my brain just kept thinking. And it was almost like it made my pain so much worse because my body's like, I remember this. I remember this. This is where the relief is. It's not in any of those shit you're doing, Ginjer. This is where the relief is. And within 3 months of that, I had quit my job up there. I had started using pills again, and my life was just, and I'm still on house arrest, mind you. I'm rolling the dice, baby. I like to push it to the edge. Still on house arrest, like running around, trying to meet my dope dealer, trying to, rob Peter to pay Paul type deal. It was just a lot.
Did you get drug tested? How are you beating drug tests?
So I started drinking those drinks from the gas station, those fucking thick. Just thinking about it.
I know someone who drank too many of them and had a seizure.
I believe that.
He dehydrated him.
Yeah, it flushes so much of the electrolytes and stuff out of your system.
Yeah, and he dehydrated himself and had a seizure. But and they were working for you.
Yeah, they always worked. And then, so like I knew my probation officer because he had been the probation officer for a friend of mine, and he never did anything appropriate, but he was very friendly. Yeah. Right. So at one point, I finally told him, hey, I relapsed. It's not good. I was scared to tell you because I had actually had a different probation officer at the beginning, and then they transferred because she went somewhere else, and I got him. And almost like within a month or so, 6 weeks of getting him, I told him. And he ended up coming to my house and like threw my needles away and stuff and told me, hey, if you need to go to the methadone clinic, I will authorize for you to be out of the house because it's medical treatment. You could say it's counseling because they have counseling up there. Yeah. And it's like, sliding scale because you don't have any money. Maybe they help you get on Medicaid or whatever.
Yeah, go get your shit together. Yeah. Is what he was saying.
And like, thank God bless him, right? Because I don't think I would have survived another bout in prison. And like, so right as this was going on, I'm starting to kind of talk with me and some of the other girls that had this experience at Lowell are starting to talk about it. So I believe very much that if I went back to that facility, that they would have killed me. They killed Latondra Ellington. I wasn't there for it, but I heard all about it. Yeah. So
you continue.
So there's a real fear of like, I don't know if this is the right thing to do to tell this man because he really has the power to fucking end my days as I know it right now.
Yeah, your life.
But he gave me an opportunity, and I kind of didn't mess around for a while. Went to the methadone clinic. I enrolled in school. I went to cosmetology school because it's the only thing they would pay for.
Yeah, whatever.
It's right down the road. I was like, I got to do something. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I got to do something where they don't care if I'm a felon. Couldn't complete it. Like, I'd get on the methadone, be on the methadone for a few months, and I'd be a 30 milligram dose, and by 10 o'clock, I'm nodding out on my feet. Everyone's wondering what's wrong with me, and by 7:30 that night, I'm in withdrawal. So it didn't last for long, and then I went back to the pills, and then by this time, we're like 2015, like summer of 2015. They take my grant away, because I missed too many days of school, even though my grades were good, because I was always very gifted with that. Like my senior year of high school, I missed 135 days of school. We were only in there 150. They couldn't prevent me from graduating because my GPA was like a 4.2 when I went into my senior year. And I was doing drugs my whole high school.
Addicts are gifted.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It's
We're
crazy.
creative, too.
I used to show up to work I never miss a day of work.
Yeah.
It's insane. People are like, oh, did you lose your job? Actually, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
I excelled in my job.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. But so it's 2015. You're coming off of house arrest at this point then.
Yeah,
Because it's
I'm
2 years.
getting ready to come off the house arrest, yes. Basically, we got to the point where they were like, hey, like you're maxed out on your time. So only thing I hadn't done was paid full restitution. And he's like, you're maxed out on your time. I'm going to tell the judge to release you. So they did. And at that point, I was already talking to intervention because I had decided.
The show.
Yes, the show.
Wait. So you were just talking to, you wrote them, I'm assuming, because you were so bad?
Yes.
Okay.
So once that scholarship was removed and I knew like there's no school for me, there's no job for me, like my life is so bad right now as it is. I was like, I'm going to shoot myself in the head outside. I didn't want to do it at my landlord's house. I wanted to do it outside so he would be able to rent the house and he wouldn't have to spend a lot of money cleaning it. That would be easier, right? Because I didn't want to I'd cause so much chaos and distress for everybody around me. I just wanted to be the easiest way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I told myself, dude, I wrote Ellen, I wrote Dr. Phil, I wrote Intervention, and I was like, if nobody comes and I can't get treatment, I'm going to shoot myself in the head outside. But after my niece's birthday, which is December 16th, and before Christmas, because I didn't want to do my birthday is 2 days after Christmas. I'm a horrible person. I can't compete with Jesus. Nobody comes around for my birthday, right? But, like, I just didn't want to do it again. Like, I just couldn't. Like I said, my first day of withdrawal was my birthday when I was 18. So it was like, dude, I'm fucking, like, 24, 25 years old, 26 years old. Like, I can't do this anymore. Intervention came out. They get 10,000 letters a day, by the way, at least at that time. And it was an anomaly that they even ever saw my letter. Never mind that they felt it imperative to come see me and felt that I was worth saving. And it was interesting because I remember telling my parents, and specifically my dad, that I wrote Intervention and was hoping they would come. And he looks me in the face and he goes, they will never come for you. And if they do, it won't matter because it won't work for you.
Ooh.
I was like, all right, cool. You still hate me. I'm not sure why, but you do. It's okay. And, like, that shit hurt my soul because I felt like I had exhausted. I tried to go to, like, the community detox centers, and they would never keep me more a couple of days because I was a liability because I got so sick. They would discharge me or send me to the hospital, and then the hospital would say, well, this is going to continue to happen. It's not going to stop. And then they would say, well, you can't come back. So I didn't feel like I had a choice. There was no money. There was no insurance. My parents were like to the point where they didn't even really, they wanted me to be someone else's problem.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Of course.
So yeah, I wrote them and we talked for like 3 months.
They called you?
Yeah, they called me and they set up. So I wrote them and pretended to be somebody else.
The parent to stage the intervention on you.
Yeah, I had to stage my own intervention because I couldn't get my family to participate in the beginning. My family wouldn't write them for me. I had even written it and just said, all I need you to do is send it from this email. They wouldn't do it. So I got some guy that I'd been kind of like loosely seeing and convinced him to be the face, but I would do all the work. I just need you to be the point of contact because the way they worked at that point in time was if the person that's being intervened upon finds out that they're having an intervention, they pack up in the middle of the night and they leave. Because they've had people die, because I'm going to have one last party, Ooh. Or people run. Or whatever, it causes problems. So to me, that's horrible. Like, can you imagine that? Like, there might be hope even if I'm going to have like one last hurrah. And then you wake up the next day thinking you're going to get help and they're all fucking gone like cowards and thieves in the night. Yeah. You know?
It's a business, unfortunately, at the end of the day.
I know. And it's a shock value show, right? So, like, it's interesting. For a long time, I didn't tell people that I was on it because, like, I'm shooting up on my neck on the show. Like, I'm whoring around, like, to support men are financing my drug problem. You know, it was not a good look for me at all. Well. You know, and I honestly thought I was going to die. So I was like, well, either way, we'll just give it a shot because I'm either going to die or I'm going to get better, right? Because I'm not going to keep living like this. I'm just not going to do it. But they came out after about 3 months of talking to them. And my family finally agreed to participate after, like, literally the day before they were going to come. They called my parents and were like, hey, she has an opportunity to get treatment. You guys are saying you want her to have treatment. You don't have the money for it, but you are literally the one thing standing in the way of her getting treatment because you don't want to participate with the show. So they did eventually. But they came out and they had my intervention on my niece's birthday, which is December 16th, which was where that timeline would have started for me to shoot myself in the head. So it was definitely a God shot. It was definitely something that had nothing to do with me, and it had everything to do with God. I had actually, I left this out, but before I had prayed and told God, like, hey, like, I'm going to fucking kill myself. Like, I mean that. Like, I had told myself, oh, everyone would be better off without me, right? I think most addicts go through that at some point, right? Everyone would be better off without me. I should just end it now. But I'd never made a plan. I had never had, like, it was never more than a fleeting thought of my life is horrible. I am desperate to not live this way anymore until I made that plan. And I felt like God heard me once. I was like, hey, buddy, I got a date. I'm working on a timeline, and I need you to get with it or just let me go because I can't do this no more, buddy. I just can't. I know you're watching, shaking your fucking head. Like, there goes Ginjer again.
So what was the show like? And then where did they end up sending you?
Like, when you say the show, do you mean the process of them filming?
What was the whole process like? And was it for the best intentions at the end of the day? Did it work for you?
So the process was interesting. They watch, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the show. I think they chose me because the men in the story. It was interesting because by the time they came out, I was already talking to who was going to become my husband, who was helping financially support me. So I didn't have a cycle of men like giving me money or coming around to give me pills because it was easier to deal with me when I was all fucking high. So there was a couple of points where they were like, hey, do you have someone that like used to give you money that you could call for the pretense to show the viewers what you will do to get your drugs? And it was interesting too because after the intervention, when I went to treatment, I met several people that had been on the show. All of them told me intervention gave me money to go get loaded. They never did that for me. And my personal belief is because they wanted to see what I would do to make it happen because it makes for a better shock value show. Oh, look, Ginger's getting on the phone. She's going to call that guy that she doesn't want to see, and he's going to bring her $400 or $500, and she's going to be high, and we're going to have that footage. It was crazy, too, because they had chopped it up, like, to make it look like there were a bunch of people. Within the week span, I'd seen 2 people. But again, it's more... There were a lot of situations that were, like, created. Like, there was another... Like, I was driving, and I didn't have a license, and I was fucking... Yeah. That's how bad it was, buddy.
Did you get in trouble?
No, I never got in trouble for it. I never had any accidents or anything like that. But they didn't want to show that I was driving because it wasn't legal, and they couldn't show that I was selling pills. So it was better to show the men financing me, and they set me up in a scene where they made me walk down the street to make it look like I walked the street to like go meet my drug dealer, and I understand, again, it's a shock value show. I was angry for a bit because I felt like they kind of dumped me. I had these legitimate concerns of like medical stuff that was going to come up with the withdrawal, and they just said whatever they could to get me on the plane. And once I got out there, they were kind of like, we're going on vacation for 2 weeks because it's Christmas. We'll see you later, you're their problem. And the facility's like, hey, we don't have the ability and the resources to care for what her needs are. Like, y'all need to come get her. It ended up being like a back and forth tussle on the phone of, hey, you need to move her. No, we're not coming to get her. She doesn't like it. She can leave, and we will run the show as we see fit and tell the viewers that Ginjer left treatment and says she's sober. Or Ginjer left treatment, nobody knows where she is. She just left. And it makes it, to me, it leaves it open to interpretation to the viewer. Ginjer didn't want help. Yeah. And I was not going to go out that way. I was like, absolutely not. We had a fucking deal. And this was a thing on my 4-step, right? My 4-step was so pivotal to me to understand who I am at my core and like what my real beliefs are, because I learned the quickest way for me to get rid of resentment is we had a deal and I always come through on my end of the deal and you tried to fuck me on mine. But baby, I did what I said I was going to do, so I'm going to hold you accountable and you're going to do what the fuck you said you were going to do. So that was the war I had to start with them. I basically, we had like 2 or 3 conversations. The last one we had was like 3 weeks, it was in January. Finally, they were like, hey, you're not moving. We're the producers. You're not moving. If you don't like it, just walk off. All you have to do is walk off and just leave. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay here. And if I die, my family's going to sue. They're going to sue you. They're going to sue the facility. They're going to sue the show. I was like, and if I live, I'm going to reach out to every single person on intervention that I can find. I'm going to ask them what their behind the scenes experience was like. Because I want to fucking know. I was on a plane the next day to a new facility.
Wow.
And I believe it was because I went, nobody else would go to bat for me. And it's crazy, too, because, like, obviously, you know, like, addicts do things to manipulate, right? So I understand that. So they're telling my family, she just tried to leave. But I wasn't trying to go home. I was trying to go to a facility that could actually care for me. The facility that they sent me to is a place called Destin Recovery Center, and I literally owe my life to that facility, the people that worked there, and the people in the rooms in that community.
Is that Destin, Florida?
Destin, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved there after. So I did 60 days in treatment there as a partial hospitalization program. So it doesn't mean, for viewers, it doesn't mean that you're in a hospital. It means that you're in rehab, but you have interactions with people in the community. You go to AA or 12-step, whatever meetings you can. You do counseling. Sometimes you go do community service. You go do things. You're not just locked down in a facility.
Community.
Yeah, it's not a lockdown facility.
Yeah.
So I did 60 days there, and then it's interesting. I was doing really well, so intervention came out to do my follow-up. When they came out, I kind of like hated Ken Seeley in the beginning because I felt like he lied to me. And I know like he just says what he has to get the job done at the end of the day, right? We're cool now, but for a while I had a big resentment against him. But he knew that. Because I made it I'm very vocal. Like, if I don't like you, you know. There's no, like, miscommunication or, like, misunderstanding on how I feel about people. I either love people or, like, I don't fuck with you. And my face is going to tell you every time you're around that I don't fuck with you.
For sure.
He came out, and while we were doing our thing, or review of how well I was doing, he's offered me 90 days of sober living because the facility was pushing me to go to sober living. I had no money. I had no fucking money. I didn't have a bank account. You know what I mean? Like... And he knew that, so he said, well, if you'll go, I'll scholarship it. So I called and broke up with the guy that had put me on the show because it wasn't, like, what kind of guy says, hey, like, I'll help you get on a show if, like, we can get married when you're sober, but, like, you can go do whatever you need to do with these guys to get the money that you need to support. It's not, shit just don't look right when you look at it from a sober mind, right? No. So I called. I broke up with him immediately. I called my landlord, said, hey, I'm coming home. I had my month's rent paid. I was paid ahead, and I had my last month rent. So I wanted to move out early so I could get that 2 months of rent back because it was like $1,600. It was a lot of money for me at the time.
Of course.
So I made all these plans. And then the day that I'm supposed to leave, my counselor comes in and is like, hey, intervention called. Ken can't sponsor you. It's a conflict of interest. Because you met him through the show. He can't, you have nowhere to go. And I was like, what do you mean? Dude, I'm getting discharged. I just told my landlord that I'm moving out. I broke up with the one person that supported me, even though it was fucking toxic. The one person that would show up for me. I now have nobody and nowhere to go. And you're telling me that I'm fucked again because of the show? So I ended up signing out AMA. I went home. I packed up my house. And then they allowed me to come back pending, like, two or 3 days later, because I had to give away everything in my house. I had a whole house full of stuff. None of it was, like, hardly worth anything, you know?
Yeah, but still.
But I kept what was sentimental, what was important, and then I literally put on Facebook, hey, free estate sale. Come get it. Just come fucking get it. And they did. And it was very therapeutic for me because I'd never done anything like that before. And when I came back, I had a clean drug screen I hadn't used. And it was really interesting because I had never really felt I knew I was codependent, but I hadn't felt it in my life until I was in that empty house alone. And the boyfriend had come and got the few things that he had there. And he was like all sad. And I'm like, well, you could stay. Even though I didn't want him to stay, I felt guilty. I felt like I owed him. That's another thing that's like a recurring theme. Like, particularly men, will come into my life and will help elevate my life for one reason or another. And then I feel obligated to stay or to, you know, be a certain way because they were a part of my growth, even after I have outgrown that relationship or friendship or situation or whatever it is. But I remember sitting alone on the floor after he had left and thinking, oh, I should just tell him to come back. But I didn't really I just wanted somebody to be there because I felt so alone in that empty house. And I realized I had no family to rely on and no support. This is sound crazy, but I had one drug dealer as part of my family. And then I had another one that was like a friend of mine. He was always the one that was telling me, hey, you should probably go to treatment. Like, you gave me like $2,000 yesterday and you're calling me today for more. And I know you didn't leave the house. So you didn't get rid of none of it. So you know what I mean? Like, you should go to treatment, bro. And it got to the point where he was kind of like curving me because he was trying to like, I think, moderate how much I was getting. But I ended up calling him while I was in the house and he gave me a ride to go watch a movie. Because I couldn't sit in the house. And it was interesting because, like, you know, you hear in AA, well, like, avoid people, places, and things, but I was done, right, at that point. I had no interest in any of that, and I just needed somebody that, like, really understood where I was at. And I had no money because I was waiting for my landlord to come through with my refunds. I literally had, like, $5 in my pocket and, like, a gift card that I was going to go watch a movie on, and I did. I think I went and watched the first Deadpool movie or something. But so after that, I went back to the treatment center. I had a clean drug screen. And while I was gone, I had somebody reach out to me randomly through myself because I took my phone when I left treatment. And she was like, hey, somebody that works for the show called me and told me about your scenario and your situation. I think the promises that have been made to you and have been not kept are atrocious. I want to help you. And I was like, why would you help me? The people who were supposed to help me feel like they have abandoned me, right? And she goes, because I'm 13 years sober. The girl's name was Angela Carrillo, and I still am in contact with her to this day. But she reached out to a friend of hers who ran Windward Way in Casa Capri in Costa Mesa, California. And they scholarshiped me for 90 days. They said, all you have to do is agree to come. And I said, put it in writing. That you're offering this to me and that when I get there, there's going to be a bed for me because I don't want to get there and then there'd be no bed for me. Now I'm stuck in California, you know. But they did what they had, and they understood too. I felt guilty even asking that because like you're offering me this amazing gift. That place was $100,000 a month. Like I could never have afforded that place.
Yeah. What is it? Like it's $300,000 right there, right?
Yeah, it's like a Passages of Malibu. Yeah. In Costa Mesa, so you're right next door to Newport just to feel broke, which I was, and it was okay. But it was really an amazing experience. I had a lot of growth there, and I met a lot of really amazing people that I keep in touch with to this day. One of them died during a relapse. They found her in a U-Haul. Someone had hidden her body, and she was like the best friend that I had in treatment. So I was sad because I got out of treatment in 2016. I immediately, when I left treatment, I got with who was my husband for the past 8 years. And we moved in. I started I went back to school. I finished my cosmetology program. And within a year, because I moved back to Jacksonville, which is like an hour from St. Augustine, it was too close. I was starting to lose my mind. He also worked out to sea as a chief engineer on big container ships. So we'd be gone for 3-4 months at a time. Mm-hmm. I was alone in this big house with no driver's license, no AA community because all my community was in Destin, and no real way to link up with people because I couldn't get around. Essentially, I ended up calling him while he was on the last month of a 4-month trip to Europe. I was like, hey, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to relapse. I have to get out of here. And he's like, okay, go do whatever you need to do. So I went to Destin and hung out with a friend of mine. And then as soon as he got off the boat from Europe, he flew to Destin, spent 2 days, found us a place to rent, went home and packed up the 2 houses he owned in Jacksonville. And then we moved to Destin. And I had exponential growth in Destin because I had so many people from the rooms come in and embrace me. And I used to say all the time, if I am different, then I am alone, right? And if I am alone, then I might as well be loaded because that is what it takes me to. Like, I would get loaded because I didn't have community, and I felt like I didn't need community when I was high. So just having those people embrace me and, like, love me and let me come in, because I'd come in kicking and screaming, you know, like, all the time. And they just let me lose my shit and talk about whatever I needed to talk about, as long as I always brought it back to a solution, you know? I believe I owe my life to the intervention process. So I know that you had one question, right? And the short answer is I would do it again. I'm ashamed of my intervention. I'm ashamed of the footage. I don't really like to talk about it, but because people watch it, right? So, and this is what fucks me up, like, more than anything. People will tell me, I support you, I love you, I'm so happy for you. And then they realize that it's on TV and they can find it. So then they go watch it with popcorn and their friends and talk about it. Dude, it's like the worst moment of my life, other than the moment where I hit that child, right? And you want to watch it for your entertainment, not because you want to understand me better, because you just want to see what it was like, right? And I understand it from, like, human curiosity, but it kind of, like, hurts. Because, like, bro, you don't care enough about me as a fucking person to be like, hey, I don't want to really, if I didn't see that from you, I believe you at face value when you say you were crazy, because, bitch, you're crazy now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why can't you just take my word for it? You have to go watch it, and it's violating all over again.
Yeah. It's crazy because I've been in those situations where I would be abusing all night long, and then I would hit a breaking point where I was like, I need help. And in your case, you reached out to the show for help, and Ellen and Dr. Phil. And it was just you wanting to be on the show just to get yourself help. You weren't looking to become a celebrity. You weren't looking to become a star.
Yeah.
You were reaching out because you just needed to be scholarship to go away to a treatment facility.
Yeah. It's interesting because the intervention team was on my amends, right? When I had to stick my foot in my mouth, you had to eat crow. But it was like, I told her when she came, the main lady who was my point of contact, her name was Karen. She came out.
Of course it's Karen.
She was really an awesome person.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, she was great. She comes out, and I tell her, hey, I knew the whole time that it was intervention, but I didn't have a choice. Like, I was going to die one way or another. I had no choice. I needed treatment. And she was like, well, we're not the free treatment show, but I understand why you did, and I'm glad that we came to help you. So it made me feel good. Like, I almost didn't tell him because I didn't know how it was going to affect my stay. You know, I didn't. And for a while, like a lot of people, the biggest misconception I felt that people had about the show was that the show pays for your treatment. They have an agreement with the facilities that they use that they will get a scholarship, and this facility will get a tax break, and they will get airtime on the show, which brings them clientele.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So it wasn't that, like, they were paying for my treatment, which is what I had thought.
Got it.
Right? And I didn't learn that until, like, way later. And I think it was more of a fluke that I learned it than, like, something I was standard told to people.
Yeah. You talked about the amends process. When you were on your journey bridging back to life, what other tools did you implement to help keep yourself sober and away from opiates?
Are you talking about, like, the spiritual toolbox? Is that what we're referring to?
I
like
mean, I am
12-step?
talking about anything and everything. How did your life get bigger and move you? You talked about the further you get away from that last high. Yeah. How did you continue to pull yourself away and move further away from that high and build and grow to the point where you don't want to go back and use pills?
I accredit a lot of it to the intervention process and the treatment. And be honest, part of why I want to do the intervention was because in my mind I was like, bro, if people see how bad it is, nobody's going to sell me drugs
Accountability,
no more. Nobody's going to sell me shit because they realize how bad it is.
Yeah, accountability.
You know? Yep. And it was like it wouldn't be an option to do what I had been doing because it's like I've laid all my cards out, right? But I think the separation, the physical separation from my family and the drugs and the lifestyle, cooped with the running through the steps and the people again, the community. My whole life, I have wanted community. And I felt like I really found it in the rooms. You know, after a while, even the people couldn't care for me in the beginning really started to have affection for me and like genuine concern for me and wanted to see me do well. And had it not been for those people showing up for me, I felt like I was a lost cause. And I felt like I wasn't really worth saving, and I deserved to be saved for a long time.
Yeah.
So to have people give me the validation of like, bro, I did that. That's all. That's all you did? Like, let me tell you. And then my sponsor had
That's the best when they do that.
I know.
I'm like, I'm the worst person. I robbed this person. They're like, really?
That's it?
That's it? Loser.
Yeah. You didn't go hard.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, too, because my facility found a sponsor for me. I needed, like, tough love. Like, I don't respond well to like, it's gonna be okay. Hey, motherfucker, you're gonna die.
That's
Are
what
you
I
willing
need.
to step over someone else's dead body to get into the rooms? Because if you're not ready.
Mm-hmm.
She had actually killed her best friend in a car accident. They were drunk. She was drunk, and the best friend died. And the friend's parents stood up for her and said, "We don't want her to go to prison. My daughter would have wanted that for her, but you can't go to the funeral." And like we had a really. I felt I could really talk to her because we had so much common ground where I had never met anybody outside of prison. I had a bunkie in prison that had killed somebody in a vehicular manslaughter. A lot of people in there doing 10, 15 years. So,
yeah.
You know, but I definitely believed that the people, the program itself, and every day I wake up, I do my 12 and 12 reading. I do my big book reading, pages 86 to 88. I do page 99. I do my prayer. I do my writings. I go to a meeting. I go to the gym. And then I come home, and I'm doing whatever else I need to do for the day for myself to, like, be sane. Mm-hmm. And my sanity would come in and out, you know.
I get it.
It was really helpful. I really believe that if I had to, like, say 3 things that were the most helpful: the community, the actual physical work, and then cooping other therapeutic things. Like, I'm really into music and art, and the physical. Hey, your body's messed up because of some things that weren't your fault, and a lot of stuff that was your fault. So now we have to start untying the necklace, right? We have to start, where does it start? What does this lead to? If I pull on this, where does it hurt here? And how do we fix that and circumvent these issues that you continue to have? And it was a lot of like, I'm dedicated to this process because there was no option for me. I was gonna sink or swim. Mm-hmm. And like for the longest time, I had the mindset of like, I'm going to die if I don't do this. Like, there is no in between for me because I go so hard with everything that I do. Everything is so like full throttle.
Yeah, of course. You're an addict.
Yeah, I fully commit, baby.
And if I'm not good at it, I want nothing to do with it.
That's absolutely right. That the ADHD.
Buy all the gear, my new thing, and then I do it for one day, and I'm never doing it again. I can't tell you how many
hobbies I have that are so expensive. I'm just like, why do I still have this? Because I haven't done it in forever.
Yep. Join the club.
Yeah, I get it. Get it, buddy.
You know what? Your experience, your strength, your story helps so many people. And I love how vulnerable you got. I watched a little bit of the show. I honestly...
It's all right.
I
honestly anticipated you too. I honestly anticipated it because of the context of the show.
Well, I care about...
Do you see me in that?
No.
Because that's what everybody tells me. Like, bro, I didn't even know that was you.
I watched it for 10 minutes and then I didn't.
Yeah, I can't watch anymore.
No. No offense to you. I care about you, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was like,
no, I totally do.
I know this story.
She's like, yeah, I've heard this before.
I've heard this before. I know, seriously. Like, I've heard it before. I heard it in the rooms.
I don't need to watch it.
Yeah, like, it is what it is. But you sharing what you're sharing now, and people who have seen that episode, has helped. I bet you have saved so many lives. And the fact that you were willing to get vulnerable and practice humility and share some of the things that you did on camera today, on the other podcasts that you've done, you're being selfless.
I kind of feel like this. So because I told you I'm not sober in the sense of I'm totally abstinent from
You're California sober
and stuff. Okay,
it is what it is.
Okay, so I find it where I was in this weird position where I didn't want to go in the rooms because I was old school AA. We were big book thumpers, and if you use any substance, you don't fucking share. So then I'm sitting in a room of people who are my friends and who understand me, feeling alone. You know, so I kind of had to switch my community a little bit once I went into the medical marijuana route, because I didn't want to feel like I was a fraud, and I didn't want to be like a poor example to maybe somebody that was struggling. So I found a way to make the gym community and really the podcast community my way of reaching out, giving back every day. Literally every day, somebody watches me on Ian's show or Hopeaholics, or they see the intervention and they just want to know, am I still alive? Is this bitch still alive? Because she's like a cockroach.
She's here. She's here. She's here. And her hair is still red. I want to say one thing. I know so many people from just being in the recovery community who, AA or no way, I know people that have stopped doing drugs and drink. I know people who smoke weed, don't do drugs or don't drink, and don't drink. There is no one way to get clean and sober.
Right.
Everyone is different. I think it's important to say, if you are listening and you are struggling and you don't know which way to go,
try this 12-step community. Try complete abstinence for just a little bit. Give yourself 90 days. We'll refund your misery, bro. 100% refund your misery.
But also to make sure you consult with an addiction specialist.
Yeah.
A medical professional in that field.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's what you did to get where you are today.
Yeah.
And it's just important that I say that because I don't want the listener to get a distorted message. For me, personally, I don't smoke weed. I never really liked smoking weed, to be honest with you. And I never had, what weed helps from a mental health standpoint. I've never embodied those symptoms. So whatever. I'm completely abstinent. You're California sober, and that works for you, and that's amazing. And your life has improved exponentially. Tell me, you had a second child 5 years ago. You have a son now.
Yes.
He's 5.
Yes.
How is it being a sober mother?
It's so much different than my first experience.
A clear mother.
Yeah, and it's great because I missed a lot because I went to prison when my child was 2.
Yeah.
He had just turned 2, and there's definitely a disconnect between me and my oldest son. He loves me. We see each other, regularly, especially given that he's in Florida and I'm in Louisiana. But he came out for my son's Halloween party, and he knows everything, right? He watched the show at probably 10, 8. So it was a lot, and as he gets older, there's more trust. But for a while with my oldest son, I couldn't fall asleep in the car or do anything that in any way mimicked drug behavior because he immediately thought, that I was on drugs, and I understood that, and I think it was a fear-based thing. You left me because you were on drugs and you did bad things. You did bad things, and that's why you're not a mom to me, and why I was robbed of a mother for years. So don't do bad things. You know what I mean? And it's nice to be able to connect with my other child. And it's weird because, even though I'm not doing illegal things, I'm not doing crazy things, I still have this deep-seated fear of, something's going to happen, I'm going to fuck up, and I'm going to lose my child. And, I built a really nice life, with the help of the people around me. And I don't want to sacrifice that for anything because it's not more for my happiness, it's for the happiness of the people around me, bro. I am so pivotal in day-to-day life. They could replace me, but it would not be the same. You know what I mean? I think the gravity of how I affect other people really hits me now versus before. It's I'm not hurting you, I'm hurting me. And you don't care about me, so why do you care that I hurt me? You know what I mean?
Well, you built awareness.
Yeah.
You've matured mentally as a person, as a human, as an active member in your family with your friends, and you've built the awareness.
Yeah.
That's amazing. How is your older son doing now, knowing that he saw the show and everything? Is he doing okay now?
He's great, dude. He's an amazing athlete. He's going to get
love
like
that.
a full ride scholarship.
No way.
Yeah, for sure.
I love that.
He's very smart, and he's very like, drugs are stupid. Like he's 15, about to be 15. He's not
fine.
like
Yeah, that's
into
great.
girls and stuff yet like that, you know?
He's focused on sports.
Yeah, he's great at it. And that's one thing I always tell his dad. Like, we had a really turbulent relationship, and like it kind of comes and goes even now. I tell him, hey, like, you were a really good parent to him and a stable parent to him when I could not be. And the fact that you kept him in sports has been really a good thing for him. I wanted to do sports so bad as a kid. I could never get my parents to commit to the time and the running around. It's a lot. It's a lot for parents.
It is.
But yeah, like my life is so... I never would have thought I had the opportunity to act in movies. Like I met John Travolta and Vera Farmiga and Amy Schumer and Michael Cera. And,
so
like I've
amazing.
been Quavo. I've been on set with like all these.
Migos?
Yeah,
that's great.
So I was in.
He was pretty cool.
I talked to John Travolta more.
Okay.
And it was actually a really awesome experience. Mm-hmm. It's like my favorite story to tell about my celebrity experiences. We're on the set of this movie. I get there and I'm randomly called to come in as background. We were filming in Mississippi over in Biloxi area at the Scarlet Pearl. And they had put in the papers that like this movie was coming out. It's called Cash Out 2. They haven't released the first one yet, but I think they're about to. So, and we filmed this already a year ago. So by the time it's released, it's like 4 years old. Either way, I needed to poop really bad when I got there. I really needed to go. And they immediately put, and normally you get on set. Listen. It's such a funny story.
Go ahead, hit me with it.
Listen, it's such a funny story. So normally it's a lot of hurry up and wait. Like you show up with all your clothes. They tell you what you like. They immediately put me in a chair for hair and makeup. I've got the dress on. They're like, go, go, go. They put me in and John Travolta's in the room. And I'm like, I didn't even know it was on the set. Like, because sometimes they don't tell you. They don't tell you sometimes what you're working on. You'll have a production title, and then you'll have, the real title. But there ended up being some turbulence on set between someone that was in charge and John Travolta, right? Okay. And, like, during this moment, I've been on set now for, like, 2 hours, and I was like, I cannot wait anymore. But I'm waiting for them because they're panning the room, and I know that I'm going to get a feature. Right? They're going to see me, and I'm going to be in the shot, which is a big deal for me. So finally, I grow some balls. I'm like, hey, I really need to go to the bathroom. Can I go? I go. I come back. They locked me out. They filmed my spot without me, bro. I was so sad because I was like, I might as well just go home now, go sleep in the corner because I missed my moment. We walk out, and there's this little lady sitting at, like, the slot machines, and she's making eye contact with everybody walking by. You can see that we're doing something, and like I said, it had been in the paper, we've been filming, so people put two and two together. Nobody will address her. A lot of times, so the funny thing in the film community is, hey, we're filming a mayonnaise commercial or American Express commercial because nobody cares. Nobody cares about a mayonnaise or an American Express commercial, so that's what we tell people. But, like, she locks eyes with me, and I already know I'm done for because I'm a horrible liar. I'm horrible at, like, curving people. So I walk by her, and she grabs my hand, and she goes, honey, are you with the film crew? And I was like, kinda? Like, I'm so important. If I go to sleep in the corner on set, they're not. I just got cut from a scene because I was in the bathroom for 2 minutes too long. Like, I'm not anybody here, right? Yeah. And she goes, well, I'm about to spend my last $100 and I'm on a fixed income because I want to see John Travolta. I've been here 3 nights in a row. And yesterday I almost got a picture of him and the security guard stepped in the way and I got a picture of the back of the security guard's head. And she's like, I really just, it would make my whole life if I could just see and get a picture of him. I was like, listen, you know what? If I see him, I'll let him know you said that. Thinking like there's no fucking way I'm going to get to talk to John Travolta. 5 minutes later, somebody that was part of crew that I'd worked on another set with was like, hey, have you been seen yet? And I was like, no, they cut me from the last scene because of the bathroom. He's like, all right. He's like, I want you to stand here. And I realized there's a stand-in next to me. Do you know what a stand-in is? Mm-hmm. Okay. So for you guys at home that don't know, a stand-in is literally someone that stands in position for the people who are important, for the main actors, for the speaking SAG roles. So I'm like, oh, who's that going to be? And then here he comes. And he was so handsome. Like, I did not expect him to be so attractive in person because, like...
What year was this?
This is last year.
Okay.
So beginning of last year.
He's old, too.
Yeah, dude, he had the bluest eyes and the clearest skin and, like, a really nice... Like, clean cut. Yeah, he was looking good. But it was crazy because, like, he locked eyes with me and stood next to me. And I'm, like, trying not to gawk, but I know I am. Finally turns around and he looks at me and was like, you look nice. And I don't know what I said. I know what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was, oh, my God, my first play was Grease. And that was what, like, really got me into, like, wanting to do theater and film. When I said it, I could tell by the look on his face that what I thought I was saying was not what I actually said because he was like, okay.
Yeah. He gets it all the time, I'm sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, and he was super cool about it. So I was like, okay, this is not working. So it's like, hey, you know what? You can make someone's day. No, you probably make her life. She might die. If there's this old lady, and I told her the story, I said, and it was crazy because we're around, like, I don't know what it's called. I guess it's craps for 7. Or you can't, I don't know.
Yeah, craps.
Okay, yeah, so we're around this table, and it's all of us actors, and then there's crew, and then there's another layer, which is like the last layer of protection, and then the velvet rope, and then there's all the people who are watching. So it's like the Red Sea parted. Like, people see me engaging with him, and then he's like, where is she? Who? Where is she? And I'm like pointing, and people start moving, because I'm like, move, because I know she's somewhere, right? But I can't see her, so people are parting, and then there's this like flickering light that's shining down on this lady, and she's like slumped over, and I tell the person next to her, hey, get her. So she gets her, I say, hey, look, and John Travolta goes like this, and then drew a heart and threw it at her. And after we were done filming, he made time to go say hi to every single person that wanted to engage with him. It was, dude, I've seen A-list celebrities like freak out on set. Yeah. So it was super cool to see him like he really cared. Like, I could really tell. It was funny too, because like, in the beginning of the conversation, I was like, I know I'm not supposed to be talking to you because it's like the first thing I tell you. Hey, don't bother the talent, okay?
Yeah, of course,
you guys are milling around.
Yeah, be professional. But you're still being professional, whatever.
Right. But he immediately goes, who told you couldn't talk to me? Where are they? And again, it's like a bad movie, like the dude's behind me with the camera, like, oh my God, don't tell him it was me. Yeah. So I segued into, the conversation. Yeah, but it was so interesting. And I never would, like, if I were on drugs still, like, I would never be able to show up on set and work a 12 to 15-hour day. Like, I would have never been able to show up on set and look the way I needed to look because I wouldn't have been together enough to have things. I wouldn't have been able to drive the hour because I would have needed to meet a dope dealer, or I would have been sick because my pills wouldn't have lasted long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
it's like my life has, for all the chaos that I had and the chaos I created, I feel like it is equivalent or exponentially better to like the gifts that I have been able to give and like the people I've been able to help and the people I've been able to help like find peace and have some peace, and like the ability to have a normal life has just been so much better than what I ever imagined. Like, I would not have imagined my life would be what it is today 10 years ago or even 3 years ago, to be honest. So like, if I had one message for everybody, it would be, stop allowing other people to tell you who you are and what your destiny is, and don't give up on yourself before the miracle happens, bro, because like, you don't know what your timeline and what your universe or your God or whatever that looks like. You don't know what that timeline is, and it's not for you to say.
That was beautifully said. Thank you. Ginjer.
I was able to sum something up for once in my life.
It's funny because that's what I always ask my guests at the end of the interview. What piece of advice would you have for the listener?
Yeah.
And I mean, you've been given a second chance at life.
For sure.
And what I love about your story is you are delivering on that second chance at life.
Yeah.
Not for yourself, for others. And you're showing up. You're being a mom to both of your children. You are an active member of your family, of your friend group.
My community.
You changed your community because you were able to do that. Imagine being stuck in addiction and trying to accommodate your mental health needs by changing your community or whatever it may be. So kudos to you. I am so happy we were able to get you on here.
Can I say one more thing? Just
Please. Yes.
So, for you guys at home, like, it's actually really hard for me to share my story. And, like, so I know you know because I inundated you with a bunch of messages where I'm like, hey, because I was watching your other interviews. I'm like, dude, this guy doesn't want me. Like, there's a lot of times where I feel like I have nothing to offer. The podcast, no, seriously, because, like, comparison is the thief of joy.
I do
right?
the same thing.
I compare myself to Ian. I compare myself to you. I compare myself.
I do the same thing.
So I'm like, what do I have to offer these people? And then I get in my head about, well, like, I'm not even correctly sober. So, like, how can I help people? I'm still milling about, like floundering like a fish. And I had like a mild panic attack before coming out here the Friday before I was supposed to get my flight to Orlando and then to come up here, because I felt like I was so worried it was going to be a waste, that you were going to walk away from this being like, this is such a waste of my time. She doesn't know how to shut up. She can't tell her story straight. Like, I don't know what to do with this. Nobody's going to watch this episode. She's not going to help anybody. And this cost me time, and time is money. But that literally goes through my head. And it's hard because, like, I read the comments. Like, the comments on Ian's thing killed me.
You know what? I got crushed. Come on. We all do. That's people.
My ego gets a little big, and the community on fucking social media just knows how to bring it right back down.
I got crushed. I want to say in response to that, you're not the only one who feels that way. You're not alone. I love that you're able to be so vulnerable, because there are plenty of listeners, I'm sure, that feel the same way. You're worth every bit of my time, of the viewer's time, and your story. No, I'm being serious.
I know you are. That's why it's
No, your story is powerful. It's unique, and it's going to help.
It is unique. I'll give you that. It's unique.
It is, and you're going to help a lot of people. Now, you sit here and you say, well, I'm not sober, quote unquote. You're not sober the way one group does it.
I'm not abstinent from all mind-altering substances, is really what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm not Mormon sober.
But, again, with the disclaimer to the listener, I think it is everyone has their own way.
Right.
Unfortunately for me, I tried the just smoking weed. I couldn't do it. For me, for Kevin Lanning, it didn't work. Because then I'm like, oh, well, you know what? Then I'll have a drink.
I'm probably okay. Yeah, this didn't hurt me. Let me just test
I'm going to go get some oxys.
Yeah.
One day, I'm just going to use one day, and it didn't work for me. But listen, like I said earlier, I know a lot of people who get sober the way you got sober. And you did do a lot of the foundational work there.
Yeah.
Which is very important. So, Ginjer, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. You absolutely crushed it. And I appreciate you taking the trip.